Last month, we told you about California's plan to reduce its prison population significantly by January. A three-judge federal panel has now extended that deadline to April to give the state time to figure out how to go about reducing the population. Right now, there are over 119,000 inmates in California, causing the prison system to operate at 150% over capacity. Inmate advocates say that this overpopulation is a violation of constitutional standards and leads to poor prison conditions. The courts say that the population needs to drop by 9,600 inmates by April rather than January. Here to bring us the latest is RT correspondent Ramon Galindo. Ramon, hi there. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what this extension is about?
Sure, and this isn't the first time that the extension, that this deadline has been extended. We have to remember that the court initially ordered the state of California to reduce its prison population to about 110,000 people, or about 137.5% of its capacity by June of 2013. Now, that has been extended until April. And this also gives a little bit more time for the attorneys representing the prisoners themselves to help negotiate new solutions in order to deal with California's prison overcrowding. Before this, it was just the governor's office and legislators who were trying to come up with ideas, but this has helped bring in attorneys for the prisoners to try to come up with some ideas to help reduce this issue of overcrowding.
Well, let's talk about some of those ideas. What kind of long-term solutions have been proposed?
Sure. The ideas coming from the state really have to do mostly with reducing the rate of recidivism here in the state of California. Now, that means spending more money on education of inmates and spending more money on mental health funding inside of the prisons as well. However, attorneys for the inmates themselves say that more needs to be done to really address the immediate issue of just a blatant overcrowding inside of the prisons.
And as I had spoke about, the attorneys for these men and women say that the overpopulation is a violation of constitutional standards, as well as it leads to these really poor prison conditions. Can you go ahead and tell us about those conditions, what it's currently like in these overcrowded prisons?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the healthcare system inside of California prisons was ruled to be unconstitutional, and this really stems from a couple of lawsuits involving inmates suffering from mental illness and just regular inmates who weren't really getting the proper care because there's just so many people stacked up on top of each other. Attorneys representing some of the mentally ill inmates describe some of the conditions. Let's hear from them.
Something like 25 to 30% of state prisoners in California are people with a severe mental illness. And those people were in horrific conditions. They would be very symptomatic, decompensate, commit suicide, be in cells where they're basically losing touch with reality, smearing themselves with their own waste, and there just wasn't enough capacity to care for them. The other companion case is a medical case where you just have people with medical conditions ranging from infections to cancer, who also were not getting minimal care. And they're in prison. It's not like they can just go to the doctor or call 911. The only care they can get is the care that the prison system gives them.
Right, and some of the judges that ruled the healthcare system in California prisons to be unconstitutional even suggested that the treatment there led to deaths. And in the most recent extension of the negotiations for this prisoner release deadline, some judges expressed a lot of concern over the fact that hundreds of mentally ill inmates are being kept in solitary confinement with what appears to be no sort of cause.
Well, Ramon, I have to ask you, why is California's prison population so much higher than the rest of the U.S.? Do you guys just have more criminals there?
Well, this is a problem that didn't happen overnight. This is decades in the making. Just for a little bit of perspective, back in the 1970s, there were about 20,000 total inmates in all of California's prison system. At its peak in 2007, there were nearly 175,000 inmates. That's an increase of about 700%. So, and a lot of this does have to do with tougher drug laws, stricter sentencing guidelines, laws such as 3 strikes, and And what we see is a lot of coverage of high-profile crimes in the news, and then that really created a string of lawmakers who were tough on crime, really competed to see who could create tougher sentencing guidelines, and years of those sort of policies unfortunately ended up with this overcrowdedness inside of the prison system.
Now, one of the reasons state officials say that they want to extend that deadline is to give the rehabilitation programs in the state time to be able to work. We'll have to see how those rehabilitation systems work, or if this deadline is going to be punted once again. RT correspondent Ramon Galindo reporting for us in Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
You bet.